Hi, we're on the air, folks. Hello, welcome back to Search Geeks Speak for another week or by month or whenever Terry and I decide to get our poop together. Um, so we're gonna look at the Google Raiders guide this week, and we have a whole bunch of fun people. And I guess we'll start with Jennifer, Jennifer Slegg, SEM host, and I guess I couldn't even I don't where would you have like a business address somewhere? I didn't even find it when I was digging around. So
Not really.
not really. Okay, well there you go. You know, don't even bother giving her work. She's too busy writing stuff all day long. She doesn't like money, so just go to her site and click on ads and stuff. Um, Good to have you. We got Bill from Go Fish Digital. I'm pretty sure I got that down by now. Right? Yeah, come on.
Yeah.
Mr. Bill Slosky. Filling in for Mr. Ammon Johns, who apparently didn't, make it. Doc Sheldon, Intrinsic Value SEO. And, of course, my buddy Terry Van Horn, international website builders, SEO pros, and, of course, hangs out with the dojo and with me forever. So we got past the pleasantries. See how quick that is, Bill? Not like those weekly things where we have to spend 10 minutes to say what we've been doing for last week. So yeah, okay. So what we're gonna do here, I guess, folks, is we're trying to dig into this. I think I don't know if everyone agrees with this, but just to get it out of the way, the Google Raiders guide isn't something where you're gonna have an aha moment and here's I can get a ranking factor, here's I can get this and that. I mean, we're kind of digging at insights and how Google looks at search quality. I guess Bill, I always explain it that way to people when I talk about it. It's an evaluation of search quality. It's not really about ranking factors and such. How do you tend to explain it to people?
One of the things I look at when I look at patents are the statements that Google tends to make when they're explaining something, which show off some of their assumptions about searchers, search, the web, and so on. What do they find important? What have they changed? What has it? They talk about factual websites and deceptive websites in this latest thing. That seems to be something that has some political ties. It's sort of in the air, in the atmosphere. It's a change that's come with the times, but I enjoy seeing those reflected in something like this. I like seeing how Google might be approaching.
So it's a correlation.
That's such a dirty word in this industry.
Yeah, I know. I had to do that. Doc, even Terry, doesn't matter. When you guys come across people like Doc, like maybe some Facebook group or this and that, and they start chirping about something they saw in a Google Raiders guide, like, how do you temper that? How do you like explain what this is as opposed to what it's not? No, don't both of you talk at once. Take your turn, sir. Doc, Terry.
Oh, you were talking to me?
Oh, I said Doc or Terry. I'm pretty sure Doc went. Well, he said Terry, so I'll just shut up now because Terry's going to run me.
No, I was trying to talk, but I forgot I was muted.
Oh, okay. All right, go ahead, man. Go ahead.
I think, like Bill said, I just tell them, no, the guide is there to feedback to Google some information to help them evaluate the performance of their algorithms. Now, yeah, it can indicate some areas that they're paying new attention to, more attention to, but it has nothing to do. It's not going to affect the way a site or a page is ranked. It's going to affect the way Google sees the performance of their algorithms, and then they may or may not make adjustments according to that feedback. And I get pushback on that. I get no bullshit. These are ranking factors. So I don't waste my time with those idiots.
Right, because it's kind of like Billy writes about a patent, and all of a sudden it's in Google. No, not necessarily. It's feedback elements.
I actually had somebody the other day in a Facebook group said, I saw somebody mentioned a post by Bill, and they say, yeah, I saw a post by him where he said such and such. So Google is doing this. I said, no, it's Google filed a patent about that. He said, well, he ought to know. He's with Google.
Yeah, I was going to say, Bill, so you're secretly working for Google now, and you just haven't told it.
He ought to know because he works for Google. I said, oh, well, you might want to let him know to check his mailbox. I'm sure he's not getting the checks.
Terry, the same question to you, I guess. If it's a client, if it's somebody on some group or a forum or internet, wherever, if somebody comes to you about something they saw in the Raiders guide and stuff, how do you temper that?
The same. I would say it's like when you look at Google research or patents, you're looking at, like Bill said, what did they think was important? What were they trying to do with the patent? And in the case of the Raiders guidelines, I look at it as, for instance, when they're telling the Raiders and explaining what E is, and there's changes to that. I'm going to look at that and say, okay, Google's changed their attitude and what they're looking at.
That EAT thing is a perfect example, dude. I think the EAT thing's a perfect example because I don't know, Jen, was that 3-4 years ago maybe when I first started surfacing?
Yeah, that's about that.
Yeah. And for those who don't know, that's expertise, authority, and trust. And that was something that sort of came up about 3-4 years ago. And I literally, since they first came out, I have every PDF and I've collected these forever. And yeah, like, you know, so these things sometimes find their way into the SEO vernacular and people start treating them as gospel as opposed to just guidelines or a hint or a direction, you know. So I think that happens to us a lot. Folks, I'm gonna put Jennifer. See how I saved you for last? That's on purpose. So I'm gonna post a link to Jennifer's post for those who haven't read it. And if you've got 2 hours on your hand, go ahead. So yeah, Jen, I don't know. We might have an hour and a half. We'll see what we do here, but obviously we can't do everything. So, you know, you have become the de facto authority on this. I used to write about these things, and then you did such a good job. I went, don't have to. I'll just get her to hang out. You know?
Someone else to do all the work.
Yeah, well, yeah, I appreciate your work. You know, again, and apparently you don't get paid for it, so that's awesome. But yeah, you know what I mean. So I know you highlighted some of your top level stuff, but I'm just going to play the devil's advocate for people listening and whatnot. And you know, as someone who follows SEO as seriously as you do, you know, what do you think are like? What things grabbed you first and second and third? And give us a couple of things to play with.
Obviously, the two big things that came out this time were the beneficial content, beneficial purpose. Like they want the Raiders to look at a web page and be like, okay, what's the purpose? What's the benefit? Why should this be in the search results? And then the other huge thing is the content creator reputation. And now they're looking at not just the website itself, but who actually wrote this article and why should we trust what they say? Okay. And so they're definitely.
The boys were talking about that one before we came on air, so I know we're going to be digging into that.
Yeah.
So the first one. So is that kind of like what we would know as SEOs and marketers as value add, or
yeah,
you know,
it's basically your quality content.
What do they tell them to look for? How's that?
They don't really go into detail. They just want people to consider the fact of what purpose does this page have? Like, why should this page be ranking above another page in the particular search results for whatever the search query is? I think they're looking, it's kind of like the anti-panda, I guess you'd say in a way, because it's looking for the cream of the crop content, basically. I think Ryan Fishkin calls it the 10x content as well. So Google wants...
that guy used to do SEO. I know it. Okay.
Everyone knows it, though. Right? It's done the rounds of so much in the industry.
Okay. But is, you know, did they talk about like just because it's long doesn't mean anything? What kind of guidance do they give them?
So that's kind of interesting because Gary and John have both reiterated like word count doesn't count. You only need as many characters as what answers the post, basically, or answers the question of the page. So, you know, the famous example we always use is how to hard boil an egg. And a couple of years ago, we got into this big conversation about this on Twitter, and someone was like, I can write, 2,000 words on how to hard boil an egg. And he's like, I could talk about the different kinds of chickens and all the different eggs. And I'm like, people don't want to know the history of the chicken just to learn how to hard boil an egg, right? And so, but in the quality rater guidelines, they actually talk about more about the length, and they don't stress so much as, you only need as many words to answer the question. They're more looking for like the in-depth content, which I thought was a little bit interesting as well.
So again, so simplistic queries wasn't as much of the focus as more in-depth queries looking for long-form content or long-form information.
Yeah, and I'm not sure if it's maybe
how many ounces in a pound should take one sentence, like they say with the chicken thing. You know what I mean? You know, do they discuss at any point in any kind of guidance to the raters as far as how to, you know, ascertain what kind of value there is, or is that just left up to the rater themselves?
It's basically left up to the raters. They're just saying, what's the purpose of this page and does it add value? Let me see if I can find the quote that went along with it. Well, I do that. You can harass the other guys. And
I was going to say, yeah, it's probably in there in your 20,000 words you wrote, so you should have no problem finding it.
Didn't they, Jennifer, to expand on that just a tiny bit, there was also the stuff about purpose of a page from the website owner's perspective, in that they want people to share it. And they kind of said that was like a purpose. It didn't make sense to me, because that's more for the owner of the website than the actual users.
Yeah, like I think it was the cat video example. All the video page examples, it's originally said, I think, to allow users to watch a video. And now suddenly I think it was like to share a cute cat video to others or something, which I was like, what? Like, there was no reason for them to make that change that I could see. And I don't think, the example, I think it was a Yahoo video thing. And if you look at I think it was in my post as well, there's a screenshot of what a Yahoo video landing page, and it is just like shares everywhere. And obviously Yahoo is doing a purpose where they're trying to drive shares to get additional traffic to the page. Whereas if you look at a YouTube video, for example, they're not looking for the shares. They're looking for keep you on the site and keep watching and watching. So that aspect I found kind of interesting.
I think it's to do with the rise of the GIF sharing sites. Things like Icon Has Cheeseburger, you know, it was a classic thing, lolcats, that was built for sharing. And there's a lot more of these little GIF file sites around now, which are useful. Most of the social platforms have started to build in GIF sharing directly into the interface. But that all started with those sites, so I think that's why they updated.
And Google,
since we've got you now, go ahead, Bill. Sorry.
Google even acquired a gift sharing site recently.
All right, so and since we got you here, you're new to the party. Going back to the original bit about content value, content messaging, and so on. I know you're huge on that. Like you're one of the guys I always love to listen to about talking about messaging and usability of content and things like that. So do you think in a search quality sense, is that something they seem to be, that they're going towards with this kind of advice, or at least this kind of search quality digging? I mean, like, is it rambling? Is it misconstrued? Is it bringing that message home? Like how does someone in your world think about something like that? Like as far as how they're advising a rater, how would you take that as an SEO and a marketer, which I know you are more of a marketer than anything?
Well, this is exactly why Google, which is so big on automation, has put so much time into quality raters who are humans. This is the training set that they're building. And it doesn't just mean that the sites they like, the pages they like, it tries to find more like those. It's a way of teaching the machine learning algorithms to recognize the things that even we haven't noticed to measure. Here's what the raters thought of this page, and this page. How does your algorithm, Mr. Machine Learning, compare to this? Are you picking up the same tastes as people are?
Bill, do you think it's also maybe potentially, at least this topic itself, potentially useful to like a web spam team? Meaning like if somebody's filling a page with useless stuff and here and there, do like he's saying, if you're training an algorithm, if these pages are coming back with low ratings from the Rater's Guide on a human level, do you think there's an element of like even web spam that could be involved in it at the end of the day?
Google shared something they called the HEART framework about 3 or 4 years ago, maybe longer, where it's a different way of evaluating and making data-driven design decisions. And I think the Raiders Evaluation Guide is a design decision-making tool. You're training people to evaluate pages and to decide whether or not they fit, to train a machine learning system. You're trying to...
But again, it's an evaluator's guide. Do you think it's to train it or to evaluate and adapt what they already have in place?
Well, what Google has said is that they're using the raters to any little algorithm thing they're trying. They throw it out to the raters and then see what comes back in terms of what sites are ranking highest. So like they've said publicly that last year with the fake news stuff, and they threw that out to the quality raters first to see, they confirmed that to evaluate how well that algo worked when it was pushed out to all these quality raters. Quality raters, obviously, they decided that it improved the search results, so then they pushed that algo live. So they're throwing all kinds of crazy algos at the quality raters and then seeing what sticks and what makes the results better and what makes them worse.
They have told us in the past that they're doing lots of tests. Yeah. They're doing like 50,000 tests a year. They're getting lots of people trying different things, and getting feedback on them is important.
I think that's why, like, years ago, like for those of us who have been in the industry a really long time, like sometimes Google would push out an algo and it made the search results like really, really bad. And then they'd roll it back and then they'd work on it. And so I think that was part of the reason why they decided, maybe we need to have someone that we can throw out these crazy algos at and make sure that it's working as intended before we launch it to everybody.
Going to a webmaster world and seeing people in panic about some change to all their search results, and then somebody comes along and says, mine's not doing that. As a matter of fact, it stopped doing that.
It used to be great.
Rolled it back. Yeah.
They used to test.
And everybody else would say, yeah, I'm not seeing that anymore either.
It was awesome being in Canada because years ago, we seemed to be like the hotbed for when they test these algos. They throw it out to Canadians first.
Yeah, before
so
you
we'd be like, oh my God,
look give it the US market. These Canadians are kind of like Americans, but there's less of them. We'll just throw it over there.
Yeah, and so like we'd see algo changes before it got unleashed to the rest of the world, as long as it was like a good change, obviously.
And going back to your question, Dave, it's easy for people to look at machine learning and always think, learning, so it's building new things. But a lot of machine learning is about refining what's already there. A lot of machine learning
that's a sense I get of it.
Yeah. So everything they do to improve the data set that all of the machine learning aspects can use is going to improve every single part of the algorithm somewhere down the line.
So that's the thing with machine learning algos. Yeah. They have to give it a directive. They say, okay, we want you to search this data and find this aspect, and then the algorithm can look for it and begin to refine its searching ability. But until it's been told what to look for, it's not going to learn a damn thing. So, go ahead.
I don't think that they're using machine learning like they're throwing out, like they're training machine learning based on what the raters are seeing. But I think maybe from the examples of what comes back from the raters, they can definitely use that. But there's...
Well, it's almost like an ongoing beta test. You know what I mean? Like in the software world or video games or whatever, they throw a beta test out there to get feedback, to get a sense of where the development process is. But when you're Google, it's an ongoing process. You're constantly adding new stuff. You can't, it's not a new software. It's an ongoing software. It's some things are like a beta test. Now I get the sense sometimes that the Raiders Guide is just that constant, continuous improvement process of throwing it out there for the search quality team to get some feedback.
Well, I don't think that they're actually looking for new things based upon the feedback from the raters. I think that they're probably adjusting their weighting in their algos.
No, they do all kinds of testing with the quality raters. Like they throw out all kinds of crazy algos at them. They're not doing it to refine. They throw out some major tests on those quality raters to see what they think. They're not just tweaking with the raters. They're looking for making major changes that can make the search results better.
All right, so we have a speaking of finite time, we have to get through Jen's 20,000 words here. I know some of the guys. Yeah, I know. This is an impossible task in an hour
Can
and a
I
half.
just
So. Go ahead.
Can I just say one thing? In with creatures with organic learning, you've got pleasure and pain. A computer doesn't have that unless you teach it. And I think that some aspects of things like data markup is to say, how pleasurable should the computer regard coming up with a result that matches this, and how unpleasant should it regard this to match those things? And that's built in to the self-reward principle, so that as it learns, oh, I enjoyed that, was built from the raters guidelines.
So you're suggesting computer treats?
Almost, but it's definitely the pain and pleasure principle.
We call them cookies.
Cookies.
All right, so Jen, the second one. Let's move on to your next one, which was the authorship and stuff that you found interesting. And again, the boys were actually talking about this in the green room before we came on, so I know this will be fun. So give us a quick overview on that, and then everyone's going to chirp at you.
So they're looking to make sure that whoever the author of the piece has some sort of good reputation. They want to make sure they don't have a bad reputation, and so that they're pumping out crap content, basically. So they're telling raters to, like, if they have an author, search for their name, search for their handle. If they have any kind of like Twitter handle or something, they're telling them to look at their social media and see what kind of impression they get from that. And they say look for any kind of autobiographical information that's not from the author's point of view. So not just looking at the bio on the website or where they're publishing elsewhere, but also, someone who's talked about that person in any kind of positive or negative. So yeah, they've never before kind of wanted us to look at reputation of the writers. It's always been, how good is the site itself? Like, what's the reputation of the site itself? And so this was the first introduction of really like, well, we care about, the quality of the site and what kind of reputation they have, but you know what? We also care about what the writer is. And I don't know if it's the prolific of, these writers publishing crap content everywhere, or
to a degree, we had 2/3 of each, expertise and authority.
Yeah.
So, when I read your synopsis of it, right? First thing I did was I went and downloaded a plugin to add authorship bylines and authorship bios to the site. Because I think if you have nothing, that's as bad as having a bad third party.
Yeah, I mean,
in that thinking.
Yeah, I mean,
and just to add to what Terry said, do you think that has part to do with the habit of marking a persona?
Yeah, I think one of the dangers with them pushing this reputation thing is people might go out and publish crap content under a well-known author's name to take advantage of that reputation. And so I'm working on an article about this aspect of it as well, and that's one of the things I'm like, well,
right.
what's going to stop someone from publishing, some really horrendous article and like attaching my name to it because, this person is really well known in the industry. We're gonna.
Yeah. Okay. So that's a really good point. So I'm going to jump to Bill on this because Bill, now we're talking about entities, right? So, fair enough that the raters are looking for this, but Bill, do you think is this an extension of entities, or is this checking on their own ability to understand entities? And further to Jennifer's point, how would Google use their knowledge of entities to fact check algorithmically, who's who on what kind of site? Like if someone wanted to go and mess around, like she's saying.
This might be where they would use something like knowledge-based trust, which they came out with 2 years ago or so. Which checks how correct most websites are in terms of 1,000 or so facts they collected, and rates the websites on their correctness, and tends to trust sites that have higher trustworthiness based on how well they do with that set of facts. So, you have a New York Times website versus a World Weekly News website.
So now you got the trust element on top of the expertise and authority, right?
You know, when I first read Jennifer's guidelines, I went to my Twitter profile and I updated that by adding my degree to it to make it look like when I write legal stuff.
I think, did you put that on Facebook or something? I remember seeing that somewhere. Actually,
I mentioned it on Facebook. Yeah.
Look what you're doing, Jen. Like Terry's running around getting plugged in, still his profiles. What have you done to us, Jen? Stop doing this. Okay?
I also asked my blogger for a client to include her credentials in her bio. And I just thought of something. I'm going to start linking to my LinkedIn profile for the first time because I got some nice nice things said about me there for a change.
I think.
Oh, that would be fake news then.
I think we all remember when Google played with authorship tagging.
Yeah, I was going to bring that up.
And they always said that, you know, they got a lot of good data from that. I think this is now testing another method and comparing the data quality. I think this is at the moment a test to see if there is another way of getting authorship information algorithmically that will be comparable or better.
Well, when we lost authorship, the unfortunate thing with that is talking about how people could slap a name on. With authorship, you actually had to go in and say, okay, I write for these sites. And so there was the back and forth thing, right? So
I think they're still going to be.
So Google has done redundant systems. So when you put Jason LD on your website with same as links to your social profiles, you're doing the same thing you were doing by including sites you write at on your Google Plus profile. Same type of association of where you write, when you write.
It still wouldn't stop anyone from saying that's you, even if it's not. Like I could publish something and say, hey, this was written by Bill, even though it wasn't, and then put all your links in there too, right?
Google's done statistical analysis of how many books. If you look at the book Ngram viewer, they can tell you the usage of different phrases through the last couple 100 years. They know how people write. They've built language models. They probably have a Bill Slawski language model. They can look at something I've written and guess that I'm the writer without actually seeing my name attached to it. Because they do have lots and lots of computers.
Bill, what do you think of using the entity IDs in your same as? That was in a recent article I read, not wrote.
The entity ID is a good idea. They use it in trends. They use it in reverse image search. It's how search engines have optimized search for their own purposes. Yeah, they're doing SEO too.
Google is implementing it in a few ways already, aren't they? With images and some other. He listed a few things that they were using it for, and when I thought about it, I thought that would be a good way to do authorship. If an author has any kind of reputation, they would get an ID, and that makes the implementation of it a lot easier than it was to implement authorship with the, the links to this, and this has got to be exactly like that, and you got to turn left here and right there. It was just too much for most websites to implement.
So the person, Jason LD on my website, includes same as links to my social profiles and includes a link to the entity ID number from Freebase, which unfortunately is gone, but MetaWeb's Wikidata has started updating those and creating those too.
They've kind of taken over from where Freebase left off, correct?
Right.
And there's actually a difference in the IDs, so you can tell which are Freebase and which are after, correct?
Right.
Thanks, Bill.
Random thing out here, Terry. Somebody in event page would like to know which plugin did you download? Open your mouth. So what plugin was
I tried
it?
one and removed it because it put the bios in 3 different places instead of one. So I don't give plugins many chances. I just uninstall them and try another one.
I really like the one I use, but I'd have to actually look and see what it's called. I saw it on someone else's website, and I'm like, oh, this is awesome. And so it's the one that I use now. I'll see if I can figure out which one it is.
All right, so we went through your top 2 there, Jen. What was another one? Let's keep rolling here. Give us some other stuff you found interesting along the way.
What else was there? There was like so much.
I know. So we got to go with the.
Oh, we can talk about low quality pages. There was so much. They made a whole bunch of changes to low quality pages. They're looking definitely more to get the raters to. I got the impression they're more focused on the raters rating the lowest sites low than they are the highest sites high. And they did include stuff like the fake news, which was added last year, but they kind of re-upped it a little bit as well. And kind of going back to the creator reputation as well, we were talking about if you have a your money or your life page, they have been told to automatically rate it low if there's no creator reputation associated with that. So if you don't know who wrote it, you have no idea like how good or not good the author is, they're told to rate it lowest. So that I thought was pretty interesting as well.
Is there any guidance, like you were saying about what you were writing it about? Is there any guidance towards evaluating the author of that? I mean, like, is it just, oh, there's an author name, I searched the internet, he exists, so it must be a good page? Like, is there any guidance on that kind of stuff, or is it just go check and see if is something?
Basically, they're telling the raters to go and do a search for the author and see what information they can find.
I always found it interesting. Again, I've been looking at these for like 6-7 years since they started coming out. What I find interesting is the average searcher is not going to do that. You know what I mean? So again, like,
well,
like,
that's again.
I appreciate the whole
raters,
evaluation
right?
process, but you know, it's.
I think they're looking for. My guess is they're planning to test an algo that's somehow going to be based off this whole creator reputation. So I think they're trying to approach it from that aspect. So. Like how everyone's going out and rushing and adding all this stuff to their websites to make it, you know, their creators.
They prep stuff with
better, right?
you know, query types and stuff. I guess like, you know, transactional, informational stuff like that. Because again, we seem to be talking about authors. We're talking about, you know, elements that are very related to kind of informational sites, informational queries, not as much transactional queries.
Yeah, so they did make one big change for your money, your life.
I was going to say, you're talking about your money in your life, but I go to, you know, search, you know, buy a new, you know, Rolls Royce. There's not going to be an author on that. You know, come on. Like, you know.
Well, if you're reading a review on it, there's definitely going to be an author.
Sure, but again, so that's, and again, informational or quasi-informational queries as opposed to a transactional one.
Yeah.
Jen, in the past, they basically said that if you didn't have to have really expertise, but say if you were talking about a ailment that you've had and you were talking about your experiences, that isn't necessarily, you know, bad content. It's should be looked at based on the user, correct?
Yeah,
but they moved away from that a bit, it sounds like.
Not so much, but they're looking for say I've had some disease for 20 years and I write a lot about it from my experience, chances are my bio, I would say, hey, I've been suffering from this disease for 20 years, right? So even if it's a hobby, like, oh, I have been knitting for 20 years or whatever kind of thing like that. Even if you're just like hobbyist or speaking from personal experience, they said that's fine, but you need to be able to qualify it. If I'm writing about some disease and I haven't had it for 20 years and I'm just going off Wikipedia, well, obviously that's not going to be very good at all. But you know, if I had it for 20 years and I'm writing from that experience, that can definitely be taken as positive, right? I think they said that kind of thing rates as not highest, but it can still rate as medium or high.
Yeah,
From personal experience.
Back to the low quality pages. What kind of definitions were they given there?
I just wanted to touch on the your money, your life. This time they added safety to it. So it's always been your money, your life. It's always based on happiness, health, and financial stability. And this time they've added safety to it. And I think that is going a lot to like, I think it's kind of tackling like fake health stuff and fake a lot of the stuff that you're seeing on the web, and you're looking at it, you're like, oh, because it's not, you can tell it's not, but people are pushing it. So I think they've, even if it's not specifically health related, this whole safety kind of like encompasses a whole range of things. Like one example they use is like car seat safety, for example. And so they don't go into too much detail of what exactly safety encompasses.
I was gonna say, like a car seat or something. Did they touch upon like reviews, maybe, or things along that element, or testing, or some sort of scientific body, or how do you qualify safety with a car seat?
Yeah, proper installation kind of thing. That I'm pretty sure it was.
That's the end user, though.
If you think about situations like somebody talking about an illness they've had, the number of times somebody will go on about some wonderful diet they had, or some fad treatment that, you know what, maybe it worked for them, but it's very much an opinion. And to present it as advice wouldn't pass the safety quality. Even if everything else, they're a genuine person, it actually worked for them. They're not promoting something because it's financially rewarding to them, but it would still fail that safety. And I think
but Eamon, to me, like that, going to that realm all of a sudden makes me wonder who's rating the raters. You know.
Well, you're always going to get personal bias as well, and they have talked a bit about that, and they're saying like most users, not just you specifically, because there's always going to like they what do they call it? The pages that like hoax pages and stuff. You know that there's a rater that's going to believe vaccines cause autism or something, and they're trying to steer people away from rating it as harmful content or based on their personal beliefs, because you are, or gun safety or gun laws or like all this kind of stuff that's kind of like the hot topic stuff. They have what they call harmful pages, and you flag it as being a harmful page, but they're trying to hopefully steer people away from, oh, this site's saying that vaccines don't cause autism, so I'm going to rate it as being wrong and hope that the algos are going to learn from that. That's not really going to happen.
I think there is always going to be an element of the minority report to all of the quality rating anyway, you know, to eliminate some of that bias. I think they're going to take off the extreme ratings one way or the other. I think they're always going to be looking for the normative.
Yeah, take the high end and low, take the high end and low end off.
Well,
stuff like rip-off reports, say that site, Ammon, would be something they're trying to remove.
Look for the raters who always rate everything positive and always rate everything negative, and reconsider including.
Well, Bill, sentiment analysis, right? You and I have read enough stuff on sentiment analysis. That same kind of approach, right?
When they introduced, it was called, I just looked it up, it's called the upsetting offensive flag. And that was introduced really to tackle the stuff like the Holocaust didn't happen, and, you know, Sandy Hook didn't happen, and all these kind of what we call hoaxes, but people like believe it. So that's the kind of content that they wanted the raters to flag. The exact thing is content that promotes hate or violence against a group of people based on, but not limited to, race, ethnicity, religion, gender, nationality, citizenship, disability, age, sexual orientation, and veteran status.
Yeah. But I'm just saying that I think there is an ongoing process of looking at the ratings that are coming back. And if they spot one of their raters has a particular bias towards whatever theory, whatever thing, whether it's, you know, this causes autism, that causes cancer, that person is out of the program pretty damn quick.
Yeah, I would think they don't have a place
actually.
for too many flat earthers, you know.
Well, we're just gonna have to wait for that next PDF rating the Google raters.
Yeah, I don't know if they, because then that also shows bias, right? If they're kicking out raters that aren't rating how they want.
I think it's
so
throwing
hard
out
to
poor
say.
data. I think, you know, if you've got a lot of
anytime you have
cameras to
data,
watch a
you're gonna
place
throw
and
out.
one of those cameras is showing something completely different and wrong, you'd replace that camera. If one of your raters is not giving you good data, you get rid of that rater. Of course you do.
All right, so Jen, I'm going to drag you back again because something people can sink their teeth into. That's, you know, we're getting a little gray area there. So again, so you were talking about low quality pages as opposed to thin content, low quality pages. What kind of guidance are they giving on that? Like as far as what is a low quality page?
They talk a lot about beneficial purpose.
Anything to do with ads? Remember once upon a time, Terry, when we used to talk to some friends of ours at Google and the whole ads above the fold and all that kind of stuff? Did they talk about ads or what? Again, sorry, I'll let you finish. What kind of guidance are they giving on a low quality page?
They expand. Well, I'll let Jen say, but I was surprised by some of this stuff.
One of the things they're targeting is clickbait, and they're specifically having the raters look at what's the headline and what's the actual content, and are you giving them giving them what they headline is promising?
Is the title a proper representation of what's on the page? Is that what you mean?
Correct. Yeah, and they want, I think they said any title that tricks or deceives a user is how they worded it. So they're wanting to make sure, and it's Alman is saying it's a form of fake news as well. Like we have these huge sensational titles, and you click on them, and we've all done it. You're like, what the hell? Like this isn't what this page was supposed to give me. And so they're trying to get those out of the search results as well, which makes sense because if we found it in the search results and we clicked it, we're being like, what the heck, Google? Like, why'd you give me this page? This isn't what I was looking for.
All right,
I think sometimes
to Ammon, since you're already talking, Ammon, Bill, either one of you, how would you algorithmically implement something like that, though?
I'm just going to quickly pick something out there. I don't necessarily think that Google wants these out of the index or out of the... I think they want to be able to recognize the difference. Because there's times when somebody might want to search for fake news about X, fake news about Hillary Clinton, and actually find some. So I don't think they're going to want to necessarily get it out of the index or make sure it can't rank for anything. But I think they want to train the algorithms so that when somebody is searching for actual news, it's not picking up the fake news or it's not ranking the fake news highly.
Sorry, go ahead, Terry.
I was just going to say, it seemed to say in there that basically that they want to still see those sites. If someone is searching for information about fake news, they want those sites to come up. But they don't want them to come up for the sites for when people are making queries where they don't want the fake news.
But let's get past fake news, even though, because let's go to the broader topic of what Jen was saying about clickbaity titles, titles that draw you in but not necessarily deliver the goods on the page, which doesn't necessarily have to be fake news, right?
Here's exactly what
we all know guys that work in the copywriting world that do that kind of stuff. So how do you? I appreciate the sentiment, but how do you algorithmically decide what is and what isn't adapting to that, conforming to that precipice?
Well, I mean, Google is kind of to a certain degree because they rewrite titles, right? I think they said 60% of titles are rewritten in some way, shape, or form, even if it's to, take away the site name or add the site name. People carefully craft their title tags for whatever, and then they look at the search results and Google has rewritten it. And part of that is because they say they want to make sure that the titles are matching what's the content of the page.
I think
also matching to what the query was as well. Yeah.
If you look at descriptions, they've been doing that for a long time. You know, everyone knows that you can suggest a meta description, but the chances of Google using it, you know, usually it won't be used.
Wasn't it you
And it's gonna be
yesterday,
query
Evan?
dependent.
Was that say you put a Shakespearean sonnet in there?
Yeah. Yeah. The big news in recent years, oh, Google supports longer meta tags. It always did, but it only used a snippet. It only used 150 characters, but you could put over 1,000 characters in there and it would use the 150 snippet that it felt closest matched the intent of the query.
So
you can
the
have
trick-
a meta description that's much longer than will display.
So the trick is to include within your meta description engaging and persuasive content that might encourage people to click. Rather
Or
than
might
the
match,
content
not only
on
that, but
the
might match a potential query. Right?
That's the other
Yes.
thing that's a big basis on how they display the search snippet is if the keyword you use is in the snippet. So people will be like, well, this is the search I want to rank for, and here's my site, but they're not using my snippet. And sometimes I've looked and I'm like, well, you don't use that word in your meta description. Like, what do you think? Why do you think Google's not showing it? Because they're trying to match and show the user whether they think that page is going to match the query or not, right?
So when you use the keywords that you think your page might be found for, even though it may not be the main keyword, make sure you use those keywords in quotable ways, in ways that if they're used as a snippet, might get people to click on that result.
Yeah.
I also noticed a while back when you're doing queries, sometimes it'll say we found this, but we didn't find this on the page. That would be similar, I think.
And ever since Hummingbird, I've been seeing that a lot more. It used to be that, you know, most of the results would come up before you were seeing this doesn't include this word. Now, the top 3 will often have, we haven't included this word, this page doesn't include that word in a 3-word query. That's 1/3 of my keywords ignored, you know, but it's generally pretty good.
Yeah, I see that a lot too. The last several months, where the first handful of results are going to have excluded query terms.
Yeah.
So they're using augmented queries because they seem to believe those get more clicks than your original query terms.
Well, the other thing I've noticed too over the same period of time, that where they do have excluded terms, it used to be that the SERP quality used to be pretty crappy. If I had a long tail term that it was missing 1 or 2 of the words, and it is improving in quality. I'm seeing less really off the wall insertions.
They wouldn't use those as augmented queries if they were low quality, if they weren't performing, if people weren't selecting them when given a chance to click on them.
Well, sometimes when you do really super long tail, and it's actually a problem in countries that in other languages that there just isn't as much content, you do get spam site surfacing simply because there's no good sites that would match the query to display.
Well, yeah, try it in Israel. You get a lot of that because they have such a small index of Hebrew content.
Or South Korea, which has lots of user-generated content in search engines like Naver because there aren't many websites to choose from.
Yeah, that's something Google actually says to people, and they're like, oh, well, I'm going to write all this stuff in English. And they're like, but why don't you write in your own language? Because the index is so much smaller. There's more chance your site's going to rank #1 for whatever your good keyword is, whereas in English, you might rank, 300.
Yeah.
All right, so Jen, we're like
I have another.
We're like 50 minutes in, and we've covered 3 things. We'll be there in no time. Okay, folks, settle in, go grab some popcorn. We're gonna be here for the next week or so. All right, so what other stuff was jumping out at you? What other stuff jumped out at you that is noteworthy?
They've added deceptive page design. So the new thing they added was any page designed to trick users into clicking on links, which may be ads or other links intended to serve the needs of the website rather than to benefit the user. So again, the whole benefit at the user. This is kind of like an expansion on, trying to get people to click on AdSense ads, thinking it's part of the navigation or something.
Right.
So
I see that all the time. Like,
Especially on download sites.
Well, no, Doc, you and I
I
both had,
posted that. Yeah.
Doc had a motherboard crapping out on him. I had some problems with a Windows update. God knows, Docs, a lot of those sites where you go looking for information on computer stuff and things like that, they hide those real well in the content, you know.
One example.
If you're not savvy, you're going to end up clicking on some of that stuff, you know.
One example that I almost fell for the other day, I was trying to find an older version of Skype. I did a Google search for it. It gave me a link for it. I went to the Skype site, and I got a big download ad right underneath it.
Yeah.
And you got to scroll down below the folder.
Meanwhile, unless you look up in the tiny corner there where it's got a little tiny text saying advertisement, most unsavvy users would end up clicking on that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I see a lot of that. Yeah.
I think that also includes a lot of those articles where you get there and 2 seconds into reading, up pops this massive, great big pop-up that you can't quite seem to close that wants you to subscribe. I think it also classes those as very much deceptive because they know full well that they are blocking people getting to the content.
One of the big things I think this might have been targeting is we're seeing a lot of prevalence of the, you get one line of an article and it's like click to read more on mobile. And chances are under that click this is an ad. A lot of times they're very strategically placed so that if you don't hit right on the read more, you're hitting the ad underneath and, off you go to an advertiser site. And so I think that's actually one of the things they're really trying to target.
And if you're on mobile, it's pretty easy to miss that.
Yeah, especially, if you're, holding one hand, you're trying to hit it with your thumb or something. So that was one of the things that stuck out at me as probably what they're trying to target there.
I thought they, I don't know if it's a change or not, but they called it distracting content. There's a lot of that on a lot of websites.
Yeah, so like when you go onto a web page and it's like 18 ads and then the content kind of thing. So that's part of kind of like this whole deceptive thing. If your secondary content, which includes ads, is too distracting or too annoying, they're rating them lowest. Yeah. So it's kind of like you have to balance the monetization versus the user.
It's kind of funny. We've gone from gray hat SEO to gray hat marketing now. Yeah, it's more prevalent than our crap used to be.
But I think they've been kind of trying to improve their algos to filter that kind of content, starting with the when they did the ad thing in Panda. We called it Goopla. And it was basically where Search Engine Land said it was ads above the fold. And it's actually when you have any kind of content that pushes the real content down the page.
Well, it wasn't. I think we talk about this now, Terry. It's I think the time has passed enough. It was How got their ass kicked for that stuff, didn't they?
Yeah.
How was. They got beaten up pretty hard over
that. They're also tackling like interstitials, and that's part of the algo now too as well. And pop-ups that are impossible to close. So like sometimes you go on mobile sites and like the X is like off the side of the screen. There's no way you can actually get to it to close it. So they're having people rate those lowest as well. They're going. They made new mention of copied content again, where they're trying to get the raters, if they suspect content is copied from somewhere, to go and do a Google search and see if they can find that and see if they can figure out who the originator of the content was as well.
Yeah.
Were they kind of looking also for citations that aren't accredited? So for instance, if someone took something directly off Wikipedia and didn't give them credit.
I can't remember specifically about crediting the source. They're just wanting to not have, wholesale copied.
Okay.
We're getting into the old duplicate content debate there, Terry. There's a lot of syndication of content that happens with high quality content. There's a lot of press releases that are genuine, that are used almost as is by lots of really good news sources.
Product feeds, stuff like that. I think it was you, Evan, yesterday that said you turned a 10,000 page site into a 500,000 one.
Yeah. So the idea that something's been used without necessarily a link to the original source is not going to be a major quality differentiator. However, if they think that something is being scraped and served with extra ads, it's the ads that are going to be penalized, not the fact it's scraped.
Well, you know, I back in the day, I used to talk to Matt a lot, and when Matt and I talk about stuff like that, the stance at Google at that time was value add. You know what I mean? It's okay to have a bunch of pages on your site that are taking content from here and there and there and there, but do you have a value add to that content? Do you have value add on the website elsewhere, or is your site just a complete scraper? You know what I mean? Back, you know, we're talking 4 or 5 years ago, but at that time, that's kind of how they looked at it.
It plays in exactly to what we were saying yesterday. You know, something I'm seeing on a lot of the forums and groups is a lot of people saying, "Oh, you know, I need to be original. My content needs to be X amount of original content." And no, it doesn't. What matters isn't whether you're scraping and combining data from various places. It's how much utility is in the page. Google is a very popular website. It has no original content, really.
Right.
It's just scraping from lots of different sources.
That was my favorite one
organizing it.
yesterday. I mean, you're like, how much of Google's content is original? I was like, all right, okay. That's a very good point.
Well, I guess they do have their developer documents and stuff.
Really, percentage-wise, though, percentage-wise, come on. You know.
They do have a lot of supportive original content, but the part that's successful is the part which is completely scraped from the web.
And the value add, of course, Jen, is did you mean or people also search for? Well, there's your value add.
But I mean, people complain about, like, they'll come up with a brand new company name and it'll show, like, did you mean? And it's going to show that for a little while until it, you know, is aware that, okay, now this, you know, nonsensical word is actually a brand now. So they're probably not meaning this other word we think it is.
And there are patents based on those prompts. They do have that planned out. There's a certain threshold of searches that need to be performed before those go away.
Yeah.
And again, Bill, I don't know how many patents or papers I've read on it, but again, just my time talking with Matt over the 10 years I knew him, attribution was a big thing too. And it's a kind of a timing thing, kind of an authority thing, but when it comes to duplicate content, quote unquote, attribution was always a big thing too. Like, they understand whose content's what. Like the Huffington Post used to grab shit from all over the place. They understood what was what.
I think one of the really important things to take away about the raters guidelines is they're not a one-step thing. It's one part. There are other parts of the algorithm that deal with various kinds of spam, and therefore the raters aren't necessarily meant to deal with that. They're certainly there to look at it slipping through, but when you take authorship, they're there to double check and say when it's useful and when it isn't. But they're not the only way that Google is going to determine authorship, and it is going to look at the link graph. It is going to look at, all right, this site says this is its author. Has this author ever linked to this site? If not, they probably don't regard this as a good source.
See, that makes sense too, for sure. Like, again, Bill, it's like part of that entity graph, I guess you could call it. Again, because Jen was saying she's thinking about this, how you could spoof it. But I think the understanding of entities in a knowledge graph is going to give Google a sense of what's legit and what's not, no?
And there was silence.
She who must be obeyed is giving him instructions.
I'll take advantage of the moment of silence to insert one thing that impressed me throughout your write-up, Jen, and aside from the fact that it was a great analysis. I noticed that a lot more emphasis in several areas this year over, rather than simply saying, if you see this is an indication of poorer quality, it should be rated lower. But now they seem to be saying a lot more often, if you see this is lowest. Even to the point of, in some areas, saying, don't bother to look any further.
If your site's not mobile friendly, you get ranked lowest.
Yeah.
Like, that's
And
something
so,
important to think of.
but it was in several areas I saw that they were actually stipulating that this is an indication of lowest. And in a couple, they just said, don't even bother looking beyond this. And
Like
that's somewhat of a new stance. They've been more quantitative before. Now they're more cut and dried. It's like, this is crap. Move on.
Yeah, and that's part of like the whole. If they're saying if a page is lack of purpose, that's rated lowest. If you can't tell what the beneficial purpose of a page is, whether it's nonsensical content or wrong content, that should be rated lowest. If your website's deceiving users, like the clickbait title that I talked about, if your site is like ads everywhere, and then finally you get to the main content, that's being ranked lowest. Yeah, so they definitely, I think I had a chart in my post that's kind of like the big list of the types of lowest pages there are, and it's just automatically rank lowest and good to go kind of thing.
Right.
So you've got to make sure your value propositions are laid out carefully and clearly and easy to find on your pages.
Yeah, I think
otherwise you can be lowest.
Yeah, I think the whole beneficial purpose thing, I think it's a really good concept that they introduced, because everyone should kind of look at their pages and be like, okay, well, what's the beneficial purpose of this page? If there's no beneficial purpose, what can I add or change or do to make it so it does have some sort of benefit?
I think it almost speaks to, I've seen a million debates in the last couple of years about how many words should someone have on a page, and everyone's looking for that sweet spot. So again, if somebody's filling a page up with extraneous words just for the sake of words that aren't really achieving the purpose, that may not be a good idea.
It's like people looking for natural linking.
That's the thing, right? It's not a dichotomy at all. No.
Yeah, I've got to make sure my links look natural.
There's no oxymoron there.
Yeah, natural link building.
Yeah, I'm trying to hire a natural link builder. Anyone know someone there? Of course, I'm a dead man now. Deborah Stoller is going to track me down later. Thank God she works in search engine land now. I don't have to worry about that anymore.
Before we kind of wrap up, one of the things I wanted to mention is they now have a new list in the guidelines that was like the most important factors for a high quality page. And the very first thing that they added to it was, what's the beneficial purpose of this page? So that's really showing how.
Now again, you got to remember, some of our listeners, watchers aren't really, as savvy as you. So what the hell's a beneficial purpose?
Whatever it is that makes the page have value to a user that lands on it. If I do a search for whatever and I end up on this page, do I have a benefit from actually having visited this page, or was it useless and I have to click the back button because the page didn't give me what, the title or the snippet promised me?
So you should create content with an inverted pyramid style and start off with why this page exists, what its purpose is.
I don't know. I really just want to put a bee in Terry's bonnet, because that's what I do. Terry, isn't this a slippery slope, though? Because I know how you always teach me stuff. You're asking a searcher or a rater or whoever that's looking for information to now be able to tell if that information is good or not. But if they knew that information was good, they wouldn't be looking for something in the first place. Isn't that a slippery slope, dude? Like, you know what I mean? Like, doesn't that?
I was actually thinking about that in regards to clickbait, titles that are clickbait.
It becomes a slippery slope.
There's a certain publication in our industry that I complain about, that their titles don't reflect the truth a lot of times. And the whole post doesn't reflect the truth. For instance, when they said that, Google was stealing website owners' traffic by putting rich snippets in that didn't mean they had to go to the website anymore, when the facts were that actually generates more traffic to the websites that get the rich snippets.
Well, I'm just going to go out and
a quality rater wouldn't even pick that up, because they would have to know what I know in order to make that determination.
Yeah, I have a problem along those lines with a lot of this stuff. I really do.
The raters rate quality featured snippets as well. They evaluate the featured snippet on the page and if it matches the query or not.
And they evaluate search results too.
Yeah.
Quickly going back.
Now,
to
I'm
the
just going to go down a
beneficial-
limb here, Terry, and say that the publication in question is that SEM post or something.
No, no.
I'm kidding. That's Jen. Come on.
Its initials are
Yeah,
SE.
I know what it is. I know what it is. We all
This
know what it is.
does.
It starts with an
tie-
S. It has an E in the middle, and the other letter comes before K. Okay.
One thing that I was wondering about is, do we think that beneficial purpose has replaced value add?
I think it's kind of like the same thing. I think it's just kind of like a better description.
No. Again, in my conversation with Matt and other people, value add means over and top of another page, something else. What does it have? It could be, you could have a product feed, or you could have whatever. But are you giving anything more beyond what everyone else has?
Right.
Just like it's value add. To me,
So
beneficial
purpose, it's in a different
beneficial purpose is it satisfying the user intent? Is what that sounds like to me. Like, I think those are two different things to me. I don't know, Jen, but
we do.
Yeah, I mean, they are two different things, but they're kind of like very
related.
Similar. Yeah, related.
Not synonymous.
Yeah, I tend to think now value add is a comparison between two results, and beneficial purpose relates to the actual query and the information on the page.
Yeah, does it satisfy the user intent?
Right.
Beneficial purpose includes new things, as we know from the write-up. It includes, is this something to share? Does it give them something interesting to share to their friends? Because sometimes that's all they really wanted. Is it entertaining? That's a beneficial purpose. It doesn't mean that everything has to make their life better. It doesn't mean it has to improve their health.
Right, satisfying user intent. I mean, I went there to be entertained. I went there to learn something. I went there, whatever. Is it satisfying?
Sometimes that might not have been their initial intent, but it was still beneficial.
One of the things I thought of just a minute ago when we were discussing the sharing part is maybe they had to give instructions to the raters about that some pages may be just about sharing that post, and that's the purpose of the page, because we all know that marketers tend to do that occasionally. And that some people would find that offensive right away off the top. Oh, they're just trying to get shares. This page is useless.
The only
Does
thing
anybody else think that may be part of it?
I think the
well,
only
doesn't
specific
that go back to the clickbait thing, though? Because how many people just share something by the title as opposed to actually reading it?
Well, that would be 90% of it. That's beyond
That's kind of why I brought up the meme generators and the GIF sharing sites, Terry, is because that's exactly that. What does it actually add to somebody's life? Not much, but it gives them something amusing to share.
But it also satisfies intent, right, Eamon? I'm looking for some meme to share on Facebook, on Twitter, whatever. I went there, I grabbed it, it satisfied my intent.
Exactly. But there could well be raters who didn't particularly like memes and might have downrated it if it wasn't written into the thing that actually this is a beneficial purpose and you should mark it as a beneficial purpose, unless it's got one of these rank it bottom because of this, or this.
Yeah, but how many of those type of meme pages are actually going to show up in the search results? We see them because they're shared on Twitter or Facebook. We don't generally see them ranking in the search results unless we're specifically searching for, hey, what's that?
I'm saying no, but a query is a query. If I put in donkey meme or donkey GIF or funny donkey GIF, it's going to show up in the search results. So it is still going to come back in a query, right?
This might surprise you, Jen, but I actually look for a lot of sort of video loops for backgrounds. I
doubt that surprises any of us.
Yeah.
And anybody that searches spinning squirrel.
Yeah.
Well, you know.
It'd be interesting.
I'm not even kidding. I was playing back the show a bit last night on my big ass TV over here, and the first thing Dania said was, "Oh man, that's going to give me a seizure." I said, "That's what I said." Anyway, sorry. Go ahead, Jen. Don't ask. You don't want to see the spinning squirrel. Long story. And for everyone else. Just look for Bill and Ammon's excellent adventure, and you'll find it. All right, so good. Yeah. that's it. We shut Jen up with a spinning squirrel.
No, I was just saying, I wonder how many people actually search for meme content, though, or GIF content.
Well, I'm an old guy. I do. Sorry.
Yeah, if you search for
you're young and hip, you probably got all these things bookmarked.
If you search for GIF, though, you're probably looking at the image search results, not the regular search results. So too.
No, I just look for GIF sites or a GIF. No, I'm just an old, lazy old man. I just, I literally, I don't even use the search box. I just type it into my address bar because everything defaults to Google and the way it goes. So I'm not lazy.
Yeah, but there's a new level of lazy now. There's Alexa.
All right, so before we go, Jen, anything else you got that stands out, or do you think we've got the high-level points here?
I think we got the high and the lows.
The minutia, like I know people get into the minutia of these things, and I used to, but I have now.
I think the most interesting thing for me was the number of instantly rate this bottom. What they want to do is get much more granular about the top and trust their spam and thin content and the other parts to get rid of the bottom. So they were getting too much information on the low end that they were already filtering out.
I think they're working on
it. They were wasting raters' time, and I think they wanted to focus much more of that raters' time on the things where it's actually going to matter, not the ones that are automatically ruled out.
Well, I think they're still looking at the tweaking part of it. Like they're looking for every little algo change that they push out to the raters because they want them to, rank the lowest of the low. Because if they push out some sort of tweak to the algo and all of a sudden the raters are coming back and there's like way more lowest rankings in the data set, they're going to be like, "Ooh, okay, this change wasn't working as intended. So let's tweak this a bit and then throw this one out and see how the raters like it."
What are you thinking there, Doc?
Say again?
I said, what are you thinking there?
I was going to say basically what Jen just said, that I think, that there's some tweaking going on, but I think that by, as Ammon is hinting, by thinning the herd a little bit, by getting rid of the dregs, it gives them an opportunity to focus on those things that are showing up on page 1 and 2 of the SERPs, not on page 312.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. Ammon, I kind of agree with what you're saying. So, but let me clarify. So you're thinking, we've got a set of algorithms that are pretty good at dealing with this stuff. So let's focus on this stuff that we're not entirely sure if we got a handle on. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, exactly that. I think there was a lot of times when, raters were looking at pages with thin content. Do you know what? We already deal with thin content quite well. Let's ignore that. We got our pandas,
we got our penguins, we got all this other stuff doing this thing down here. So search quality itself is for objective viewpoints we're not so good at. So let's.
That guy really wants to sell you a link, Bill. Bill, it's outreach. You've got to take it.
Your Google profile is in jeopardy.
It's Chase Reiner's calling, and he's got a really good new video for you.
I think the big thing that has changed that most webmasters should take into account, and this ties back to something Bill was saying earlier about, make sure you've got this, make sure you've got that. I think one thing has changed, and that's that the tolerance for the wrong things. It used to be that if the rest of your page was really great, but you had that great big interstitial, the massive great big banner, it was a worthwhile risk. And I think that may have changed. I think now you need to get rid of those things that automatically rate you bottom.
When you have that interstitial on your page that says on the bottom, the only way to get rid of it is to click on, no, I don't really care about my ratings.
I hate those passive aggressive. But I mean, their interstitial algo thing that they introduced last year, maybe even the year before, kind of tackles that. Yeah. And then they went after the fake interstitials. That's like, it looks like an interstitial, but you scroll down far enough and you finally get to the real content.
Right. So on our way out the door, go ahead, Bill. Go.
I think Google's trying to circumvent having the New York Times tell them that their search results are really bad by having the raters do it first.
Well, I mean, a lot of these guidelines have changed because of bad publicity, like the whole Holocaust thing. Google got a ton of negative press about that. And so when they updated the raters last year, or the guidelines last year, that was specifically targeted to, you know, the fake news and the erroneous content like that, hoaxes and stuff.
Yeah.
So on our way out the door, guys, girls, everyone. I think there's also an element that you know, again, Jen, you're looking at this year compared to last year, and then last year you're looking at that year compared to the one before. There's a evolutionary element to all this. You know what I mean? Like if you've been reading these things for the last 5 or 6 years, like we have, and you it just like, you know, Bill reading patents and evolution of that and papers. I think there's a sense as an SEO that's almost a responsibility in a way to understand this evolution of these rater guidelines, of various different changes that happen all the time. You know, and I think it trains your mind. It helps your mind to understand where things might be going and to, you know, think ahead, you know. Future proofing, right, Terry?
That's what we do.
Yeah. It's one of those things. We make recommendations to business owners, to website designers, and ideally you want those recommendations to be good, not just for the next 3 months, but for the next 3 years. Because it's more efficient that way. So if you've got an idea of what direction things are heading, you can guess some of the things that are going to be in the next set of raters guidelines and have already planned ahead, so that you're not having to suddenly change things 6 months or a year down the line.
Sure, can I wait till the last week of December and write a post about what I think Google's doing next year?
The content that you create should be based upon what you believe your audience wants and expects to see in your pages. But knowing what Google wants and expects to see in your pages, in addition to that, is probably helpful.
Because we kind of started off by saying, you know, don't take this stuff verbatim. Don't take this stuff as, you know, looking for that magic button. So I just wanted to kind of end on that note in the sense that understand, if it's your first time hearing about it, if you're watching this, great, then watch next year's and then watch the year after that. And, you know, I think at the end of the day, it's just that cumulative knowledge we have of how Google's thinking about stuff that helps us, like Eamon, you were saying, to future-proof things going forward, you know, for our clients.
I always tell people to look at the raters guidelines as kind of like a handbook of the types of sites Google wants to see ranking highest and the types of sites Google wants to rank lowest. So I say, like, look at what they list as should be rated highest and try to match that, like put as much of that onto your pages as you can. And if you're doing any of the stuff that's come up as lowest, then you want to adjust those, like remove the, 18 ads above the fold or whatever. And kind of like on the side of that, someone came out to me at a conference after I spoke about the rater guidelines. So they're like, yeah, one of my sites is one of the examples. So yeah, if you see any of your own sites as lowest examples in there, you're going to have a bad day.
Well, no, if you don't own that site, just go look for a job elsewhere. Things are much to get really bad.
They're like, how can I get my site out of here? And I'm like, good luck.
I use it also for like development in the future. So for instance, if I was doing a medical site now, I wouldn't take guest posting. I would go and find people to write that are experts, knowing that Google is probably going to ignore or it's going to rate it very low if they can't find a reputation for that.
But I guess theoretically that's still a guest post. Just find authoritative ones. All right, I'm gonna wrap it up here, folks.
You class them as a specialist columnist. You know, a lot of good sources do that. They offer somebody a regular spot. I've done that with some clients' blogs in the past, and it's worked out very well. Preferably somebody who is already a successful blogger, has their own audience, because then you're bringing a whole new audience to your site to see their favorite writer as well.
Yeah, that's why I don't look for guest posting. I look to become a author on a website that actually gets traffic. To me, guest posting is nonsense because mostly you're on sites that don't send any traffic or they wouldn't be taking guest posts.
All right, well, you guys can keep talking about this all day long. I'm gonna kill it here, folks. Thank you for coming out, Jen. Thank you for all your work disseminating this stuff, taking it apart. Again, it saves me a lot of time.
You're welcome.
I used to do this stuff. Now I got you, and I'm old, so Ammon, thank you, Terry, Doc, Bill, of course. Thanks, guys. It's a lot of fun. We kind of put this together on a whim, but as soon as it came out, and then Jen wrote about it, I was like, we got to do it. Well, there's a lot of misinformation that comes out of it. A lot of people, again, take this stuff too seriously or not serious enough, and everything in between. Thank you, everyone. All right, we're out of here. Say goodbye. Bye.
Wow.
And if everyone's like rating these people, all their links are on the event page on Google+, their Twitter, their business links, and everything else like that. Thank you.